Magandang araw mga bata! Ako si Ma'am Regine, ang teacher mo sa math. Today we will be learning about algebraic expressions. This is a lesson for grade 7 mathematics under quarter 2 lesson 3. Kaya tara na, and let's do the math. Sa English, meron tayo tinatawag na phrase. It is a group of words that does not express complete thoughts. Meron din tayong sentence, which is a group of words that express complete thoughts. Sa math, meron din tayong katumbas ng phrase and sentence. We call it mathematical phrase and mathematical sentence. Hindi rin nawawala ng symbols sa math. Meron tayong dalawang kinds of symbols. First, we have operational symbols and relational symbols. When we say operational symbols from the word itself, these are symbols that are used to imply operations. For relational symbols naman, these are symbols that are used to imply relation of two quantities. Say for example, equality and inequality, but for this video, we will be focusing on mathematical phrase only. As for the operational symbols, here are some of what we have. There are four basic operations in mathematics. We have addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We also have involution and evolution, pero itong apat yung talaga pinaka-fundamental operations sa math. Start tayo sa addition. So for addition, this is the process, this is the operation, at yung kanyang symbol ay ito. This is called the plus sign. These are some of the words associated to the symbol. Pwedeng plus, add, increased by, more than, or sum of. Kapag nakita natin itong mga words or phrases na ito, automatically ang kanyang tinutukoy na operation ay addition. Next, we have subtraction. Subtraction is the process or the operation. Ang kanyang sign ay ito. Tinatawag ito na minus sign. So, words associated to this symbol ay minus, subtract from, decreases by, diminished, or difference. Pag nakita natin itong mga words na ito, lahat ito ay nagpe-pertain sa process na subtraction. Next, we have multiplication. For multiplication, we have a few signs or symbols. Pwedeng yung usual yung nakasanayan natin na X. Binabasa natin ito as times. Pwede rin naman na naka-enclose siya sa parenthesis. Pwede rin itong parang tuldok na ito. At pwede rin ang braces. There are also times wherein ang mga numbers or number and a letter ay magkadikit pero wala siyang symbol. Ito, no symbol between variables means multiplication as well. So mamaya makikita natin yung mga ganong example. Aside from that, we also have the words multiply, multiplied by, the product of, and yung times. Pag nakita natin itong mga ito, itong mga words and phrases na ito ay tumutukoy sa process na multiplication. For division, we have either the division sign, ito yung para siyang minus sign, pero sa taas at baba nito ay merong tuldok. Pwede rin naman yung parang guhit siya sa fraction, para siyang fraction bar, tinatawag siya na bar. And these are some of the words associated to division, divide, quotient, and ratio. Aside from the four fundamental operations in mathematics, we also have involution and evolution. When we say involution, this refers to exponents. Ito ang itsura ng exponents. Ito yung kanyang form. A is the base and X here stands for the exponent. Ang exponent ay sinusulat ng mas maliit kaysa sa kanyang base at ito ay nakapwesto sa upper right corner ng base. Exponents tell us how many times a base must be multiplied by itself. These are some of the words associated with exponents. Pwede siyang basahin as raised to the power of, pwede ring squared, and cubed. Aside from involution, ang kanyang total opposite ay ang evolution. This is the symbol known as radical sign. Pag nakita natin itong symbol na ito, it pertains to nth roots. these are some of the most commonly used symbols in mathematics. Translating mathematical phrases to verbal phrases. Ang difference ng mathematical at verbal phrase ay, let's say na mathematical phrases are for mathematics and verbal phrases naman are for English. Therefore, ang mathematical phrases ay binubuo ng mga numbers and symbols, whereas itong verbal phrases ay binubuo ng words. Bigay tayo ng example. Meron tayo ditong numbers na 3 and 5 at meron din tayong plus sign. We have to translate this mathematical phrase, ito ang example ng mathematical phrase, into a verbal phrase. Tulad ng nabanggit kanina, pag nakita natin itong sign na ito, plus sign, automatically, it refers to the process or operation addition. Kaya naman, itong mga words na ito ay pwede nating gamitin para i-translate siya into verbal phrase. An example is 3 plus 5. This is the most common way on how to read this mathematical phrase. 3 plus 5. Aside from that, pwede rin natin siyang basahin as 3 added to 5. So, we use added to. Pwede rin naman na 3 increased by 5. Increased by, nadagdagan. 3, nadagdagan siya ng 5. We can also read it as 3 more than 5. Pareho lang sila na ang ibig sabihin. Or we can read it as the sum of 3 and 5 because sum is the result of the process of addition. Next example, we have the letter X and we also have the minus sign and number 5. When we see the minus sign, automatically it refers to the process or operation subtraction, and these are some of the words that we can use to translate it into a verbal phrase. By the way, pag tayo ay nakakakita ng mga mathematical phrase na ganito, na hindi siya puro numbers, walang specific number, instead, tayo ay naglagay ng letter, we can read it as a number or the number, and it can be represented by any letter from the alphabet. So in this case, X ang ginamit, pero pwede naman siya na A to Z, any letter from the alphabet. At ang basa natin dyan ay hindi the letter or a letter, kundi a number. Kaya naman, to translate this mathematical phrase into a verbal phrase, pwede siyang maging a number minus 5. A number. Pwede rin naman na a number decreased by 5. Ang number daw ay decreased by or binawasan ng 5. You have to be mindful by the use of by and from. Kasi nagiging iba yung kanyang meaning kapag ginamit natin yung by and from. In this case, ang sabi dito, yung number which is X, ang babawasan ng 5. It means tama yung ating paggamit ng word na by instead of from. Ginamit natin yung from, a number decreased from 5, magiging, ang ibig sabihin nito ay, a number, itong X daw ay, ibabawas natin mula sa 5. Kaya instead of translating this mathematical phrase, kung ang ginamit natin ay from, ito ang ating titranslate. A number, this is X, decreased from, ibinawas mula kay 5. So ito yung kanyang itsura. Kapag ginamit natin ang from in this scenario, mali yung ating tinatranslate. So we have to be mindful if we are using by and from. Kung gusto talaga natin gamitin yung phrase na decreased from, pwede naman ito ay magiging 5 decreased from a number. Yung 5 daw ay ibabawas mula sa isang number. Aside from that, pwede rin naman ang the difference of a number and 5 because difference is the result of the process subtraction. Next mathematical phrase, we have 3 and then the letter Y. Nabanggit natin kanina na kapag tayo ay walang nakikita na symbol sa pagitan ng mga numbers or letters, no symbol implies multiplication. So dito wala tayong nakikitang symbol na plus, wala ring minus sign. Magkadikit lang siya. It implies multiplication right away. And these are some of the phrases or words that we can use to translate this mathematical phrase into a verbal phrase. Pwede natin gamitin yung pinaka-common, 3 times a number. 3 times a number since multiplication naman ito. Aside from 3 times a number, pwede rin natin gamitin ang thrice a number. 3 times a number and thrice a number ay pareho lang sila ng ibig sabihin. Kaya nga lang, instead of using 3 times, you use thrice. Itong term na thrice ay special lamang kay number 3. Hindi ito nagagamit sa mga numbers from 4 and up. So, kung ito ay, say for example, 4y, magiging 4 times a number siya. Kung 5, 5 times a number, and so on. Wala siyang special name such as thrice. Aside from thrice a number, meron ding special name kapag 2. Say for example, we have 2 and m. Instead of us reading it as 2 times a number, pwede yun, tama din naman yun. We can also read it as twice a number. So, yung twice ay isang word na special lamang kay 2. Yung thrice ay isang word na special lamang kay 3. Twice and thrice, it implies multiplication. Pwede rin na 3 times a number or 2 times a number. Pero for numbers 4 and above, wala siyang special na word. So, balik tayo dito kay 3y. Aside from 3 times a number and thrice a number, pwede rin siyang basahin as 3 multiplied by a number. Pwede rin 3 multiplied to a number. Walang problema yung by and to for multiplication. It means the same thing. And also, the product of 3 and a number because product is the result in the multiplication process. Next example, we have C. Meron tayong bar and 4. Na-mention natin kanina na pag nakita natin yung bar, aside from the division sign, it automatically implies division. And these are some of the words that we can use to translate it into a verbal phrase. It can be read as a number, which in this case is C, divided by 4. Pwede rin naman na the quotient of a number and 4 because quotient is the result of the process division. Kung hindi naman quotient, pwede naman natin palitan ng ratio. Another example we have here, A, and then meron siyang katabi na 2. This refers to involution or exponents. A here is the base, and 2 is the exponent. We can use these words to translate this into a verbal phrase. So, pwede siyang maging square of a number. Just like how we use twice and thrice, na ang twice and thrice ay mga special words specifically for 2 and 3. Sa involution or exponent, meron din tayong special na word kapag ang exponent ay 2. That is called square. Pwede rin naman na squared. This mathematical phrase is simply read as a squared kasi 2 yung exponent. Pwede rin naman yung kanyang usual na pagbabasa sa kanya. Itong A, binabasa natin siya as a number. A number raised to the power of 2. Itong raised to the power of ay usually ginagamit natin kapag ang exponent ay 4 and up. Dahil kapag ang exponent ay 2 or 3, meron tayong special terms for them. Kapag 3 naman ang exponent, we can read it as cube. So, this example can be read as a cube. Or pwede rin naman na a number raised to the power of 3. But since the exponent is 3, pwede natin siyang basahin sa kanyang special term which is cube. So, ulitin lang natin, kapag ang exponent ay 2, we can read it as squared. Kapag naman 3 ang exponent, pwedeng cube. Pero for numbers 4 and above, we'll have to read it as raised to the power of. Another example, we have here the radical sign at meron siyang number sa loob. This is what we call the radicand. Yung number sa labas, yun yung tinatawag nating index. This is of course pertaining to nth roots. Kapag ang radical sign ay walang katabi na visible na index, walang number dito sa labas, automatically ito ay merong index na invisible to. At kapag 2 or invisible to ang index ng isang nth root, automatically ito ay binabasa as square root. So, pareho lang naman yung involution at evolution na square ang tawag kapag 2 yung kanilang exponent or kanilang index. However, kapag evolution, dadagdagan natin ang term na root. square root. Kapag square lang, exponent yon. This example can be read as square root of 4. Another example we have here, radical sign. Meron tayong b sa loob. This is the radicand. And kanyang index ay visible na 3. Just like square root, meron din tayong special term kapag ang index ay 3. Tulad din ng exponent, ito din ay cube. Kaya lang, ito ay dadagdagan mo ng term na root. Cube root kasi evolution siya. So this is read as cube root of a number. A number pertains to b. For index 4 and above, wala tayong special term for them. Binabasa natin siya as 4th root, 5th root, 6th root, and so on. Translating verbal phrases to mathematical phrases. This time, we will be translating words into numbers and symbols. This is an example. Thrice the sum of 5 and a number. From this verbal phrase, i-analyze natin siya at bigyan natin siya ng number or symbol na katumbas. So here, thrice refers to 3. Sum refers to addition because sum is the result of the process of addition. 5, ito yung kanyang numerical value, and a number. Since ang nilagay lang ay a number, we can use any letter from the alphabet. Pwedeng A to Z, pero in this case, we will use M. So, meron na tayong thrice na 3, sum na plus sign, 5, and a number, ang ginamit natin ay M. Pwede na natin siyang i-translate into a mathematical phrase. Alam natin dito na kapag may nakalagay na sum, automatically tayo ay magpe-perform ng addition. So, lagay natin dyan yung plus sign. Next, ano nga ba yung ating mga i-add? Sum ng alin? So, yun ay sum ng 5 at a number. So, yun ay 5 plus m. This is the sum of 5 and a number. Tapos, may nakalagay na thrice, meaning, yung sum ng 5 and a number ay imumultiply natin sa 3. Lagay natin yung 3 sa harapan nila. However, hindi ito natatapos ng ganito lang because it will be read as the sum of 35 and a number. Mukha siyang 35, hindi siya mukhang thrice. Kaya, para ma-imply natin yung process the multiplication dito ay gumamit tayo ng parentheses. Pag nakita natin ang mathematical phrase na ito, it means na kailangan nating unahing i-perform yung operation dito sa loob ng parentheses bago tayo makapag-multiply. This is following the rules of GEMDAS. GEMDAS is an acronym. G stands for group, E for exponent, M and D for multiplication and division, and A and S stand for addition and subtraction. GEMDAS ay yung rule na nagsasabi sa atin kung anong operation ang ating dapat unahin. In this case, group muna. Ma-identify natin ang operation na kailangan siyang unahin, group together siya pag siya ay naka-enclose either parentheses, pwede rin na brackets or raise. In this case, itong 5 plus m ay naka-enclose sa parentheses. Ibig sabihin, group together siya. Kailangan muna nating i-perform itong operation na ito. So, kailangan muna natin silang i-add together bago tayo lumabas, bago tayo makapag-multiply. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng GEMDAS. After ng group, kapag na-perform mo na yung mga group together, kung meron ka nakikita na naka-exponents, ito yung susunod mo na ipe-perform. Pero in this case, wala naman tayong exponent. Punta tayo sa pangatlo, we have multiplication and division. It doesn't mean na mauuna si multiplication kay division lagi. Pwedeng mauna si division kay multiplication kung sa ating mathematical phrase from left to right, nauuna yung division. So, ang multiplication and division ay parehong pangatlo. It depends kung sino na lang yung nauuna from left to right. Ganon din yung same reasoning natin for addition and subtraction. Pareho sila na pang-apat. It doesn't mean na dapat laging mauuna yung addition kaysa subtraction. It would depend sa mathematical phrase. Kung ang mathematical phrase from left to right, nauuna na i-perform ang subtraction, then do so. ito yung kanyang pagkakasunod-sunod. Hindi pwedeng mag-add or subtract ka muna bago ka mag-multiply or divide dahil nauuna ang multiplication and division kaysa addition and subtraction. Pinakauna sa lahat ang group, hindi pwedeng perform mo muna yung exponent. Kailangan nating sundin yung pagkakasunod-sunod ng GEMTAS. For example, subtract 2/3 of the number from 30. Analyze natin at translate natin sila isa-isa into number and symbol. Subtract, so kailangan nating maglagay ng minus sign. 2/3 is a fraction. The number, pwede tayong pumili ng any letter from the alphabet. This time, I'll be using X. And 30, ito yung kanyang numerical na form. After natin siyang matranslate into symbols and numbers, pwede na natin siyang gawing mathematical phrase. Una natin gagawin ay ilagay yung operation. So, alam natin na subtract, maglagay tayo ng minus sign. Sino yung isa-subtract kanino? So, gumamit tayo dito ng word na from. Subtract 2/3 of the number from 30. It means that yung 2/3 of the number ang ibabawas mula kay 30. So, si 30, hindi mo siya babawasan. Siya yung babawasan. So, siya yung nasa unahan dahil siya yung babawasan. And then, 2/3 of the number, 2/3 of the number. It implies multiplication. Ito yung ating mathematical phrase for this verbal phrase. Following the rule for GEMTAS, kung ipe-perform natin ito, uunahin muna natin yung multiplication kasi multiplication and division ay pangatlo. Then after natin i-perform itong operation na ito, saka tayo pwedeng mag-subtract. Another example, 1/2 the square root of twice the square of the number. Translate natin into symbol and numbers. 1/2 is a fraction. Square root, twice, it pertains to number 2. Square, ito ay exponent na 2. The number, any letter from the alphabet, this time I'm using Y. Since meron na tayo nitong mga symbols and letters na ito, pwede na natin siyang i-translate into a mathematical phrase. Since medyo mahaba siya and medyo complicated siya, simulan natin siya from dulo, yung pinaka-base niya, the number. So, ilagay natin ang Y. Yung kadikit niya ay square of the number. Square of the number, meaning didikit natin yung exponent kay number. Square of the number. Next, twice the square of the number. Twice. So, dyan natin ilalagay yung 2. Meaning, imumultiply natin yung 2 dito sa square of the number. Next, square root of twice the square of the number. So, maglagay tayo ng square root. At last ay 1/2. So, 1/2 the square root of twice the square of the numbers. Technically, it just means that yung 1/2 ay imumultiply natin dito. Kaya lang, pwede pa natin siyang mas ayusin pa. We have to multiply 1/2 by the square root of twice the square of the number. 1/2 here is a fraction. Ito ay pwede natin gawing fraction naman, wala namang problema. Para hindi tayo malito, ito ay pwede natin gawin na fraction. Automatic na ito ay may invisible na 1 as denominator. So, given that, pwede natin siyang i-multiply. Yung 1, pwede nating i-multiply dito, the square root of twice the square of the number, which is sarili niya pa rin because multiplied lang siya by 1. And then 2, multiplied sa invisible 1 na ating denominator, which is 2. Paano naging ganito yung sagot? Minultiply natin ito kay 1, which isang sagot ay sarili niya. And then kinuha natin yung fraction bar kasi magiging fraction na yung sagot natin. Nag-multiply tayo ng 2 fractions. And then ito ay nakuha natin sa 2 times 1. Yung 1 ay yung invisible na denominator nito kanina. Ito na yung ating final answer for this verbal phrase. Algebraic expressions. These are phrases that can be a number, a single variable, or a combination of letters, numbers, and operational symbols. Ang algebraic expressions ay parte ng isang branch ng mathematics which we call algebra. And these are the language of algebra. Algebra comes from the Arabic word algebra, which means restoration. In 1820 AD by Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. Algebra, simply said, this is the branch of mathematics wherein we combine letters and numbers and we perform operations on them. These will be the common terms that you will encounter as you go along with learning algebra. Una ay constant. It is a number on its own. So for example, 5 or any number na binanggit yung kanyang specific value ay isang constant. Aside from 5, you can also use 3, 7, 1 million, and so on. Basta yung number ay ibinigay yung kanyang specific value. Because aside from constant, we also have what we call variable. It's a symbol, usually letters, which represent a value or a number. Katulad nun tayo ay nag-convert ng verbal phrase to mathematical phrase and vice versa. Kapag tayo ay nakakita ng any letter from the alphabet from A to Z, we read it as a number. This is what we call variable. Hindi binigay yung kanyang specific na value, hindi siya constant, variable lamang siya. And sa algebra, the most common variable that is being used is x. This is why sa algebra, hindi natin masyadong ginagamit yung multiplication symbol na x, yung times, dahil pwede natin siyang ma-confuse into a variable which is x. It's much better to use parentheses. Or idikit lang natin siya, no symbol at all. Another language of algebra is term. It is a constant, a variable, or constants and variables multiplied together. An example of term ay 5. A constant is a term. Pwede rin yung x because a variable is also a term. Or pwede rin naman na combine sila together. Implied na sila ay kailangang i-multiply, magkadikit sila. So those are examples of terms. Discussing terms specifically, we have what we call numerical coefficients. This is the constant or the number part in terms. So for example, dito sa 5x, ito yung kukunin natin na example. Between 5 and x, sa kanilang dalawa, ang numerical coefficient ay si 5. Dahil ang x dito or yung variable part sa isang term ay tinatawag naman na literal coefficient. This is the variable including exponents. So for 5 and x, ang literal coefficient ay x, which is the variable. Ang sabi rito, the literal coefficient includes exponents. So for 3a squared, 3 is the numerical coefficient and a squared, including the exponent, a the variable and the exponent 2, a squared here is the literal coefficient. Isa ring paalala mga bata na ang exponents, ang visible lamang dyan ay mga numbers from 2 and above. Pwede rin yung negative exponents. Pero pag ang isang variable ay napapansin yung walang katabing exponent na visible, automatically ito ay may invisible 1. Kaya dito sa 3a squared, ang exponent ay 2. Itong variable na ito sa 5x, ang exponent niya ay 1, invisible 1. And exponents are very important for us to distinguish the degree of a term. This is the highest exponent or highest sum of exponents of the variables in a term. Tulad ng nabanggit natin kanina, dito sa 5x, ang kanyang exponent ay invisible 1. Therefore, ang kanyang degree ay 1, since ang exponent ng 5x ay 1. Ito naman 3a squared, ang exponent niya ay 2, kaya naman ang kanyang degree ay 2. Another example, if we have here two terms, so itong mga ito, itong 5x, itong 3a squared, x, and 5, these are just single terms. Pero in such cases wherein we have more than one term, in this case, we have two terms. Terms are separated by either plus or minus sign. Just like this example, we have two terms. Ito yung ating unang term, 5x. Yung pangalawa nating term ay 3a squared. Sila ay separated by a symbol which is plus. Kaya we have two terms here. At ang ating degree ay malalaman natin depende sa kung ano yung mas mataas na degree nitong dalawang to. Yung 5x, ang degree niya ay 1. Ito naman na 3a squared, ang degree niya ay 2. So sa kanilang dalawa, mas mataas yung 2. Therefore, ang degree ay 2. Hindi natin sila pwedeng ipag-add dahil separated sila by a symbol. Magkaiba silang term. Ang pwede lang natin i-add ay ito ay parte sila ng isang term. Negative 4xy, this is just a single term. Itong negative na ito ay nagpe-pertain sa kanyang sign, hindi siya to separate, tsaka wala naman siyang kasama. So we have here the variables x, y, and z. Since wala tayong nakikita na visible na exponent, automatic sila ay may mga 1 na exponent. Kaya pagpo-plus natin yung tatlong yon. 1 plus 1 plus 1. Dahil itong x, y, z kada isa ay may exponent na invisible 1, kaya ang degree nito ay 3. 1 plus 1 plus 1. Another example, we have 5x plus 3ab squared minus 4yz. This case, meron tayong 3 terms separated by plus and minus sign. Isa pa nga palang bagay mga bata, kapag ang mga terms ay separated na mga signs tulad nito, bukod sa ang duty nitong plus and minus sign ay to separate terms para hindi siya magkadikit-dikit, ito rin ay tumutukoy sa sign nitong kanyang kasunod na term. So for example, ito plus 3ab squared. Itong 3ab squared ay positive. Say for example, minus 4yz. Itong 4yz ay negative. Itong 5x ay walang plus or negative sign. Automatic na ito ay positive. Kunin natin ang degree nitong expression na ito. 5x, ang degree niya ay 1. 3ab squared, ang degree nito ay 3. Nakuha ang 3 sa 2 plus 1, invisible 1 ang a. So 1 plus 2 ay 3. Dito naman sa 4yz, ang exponent nitong y ay 1 at ang z ay 1 din. So 1 plus 1 is 2. 1, 3, and 2. Among these 3, ang pinakamataas na degree ay 3. Kaya ang degree niya ay 3. Last example, we have 3x squared yc plus x cubed yz squared minus 2xyz plus 4xy squared z. Meron tayong 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. Para malaman natin yung degree, isa-isahin natin. Dapat kung sino yung term na may pinakamataas na degree, yun yung degree ng buong expression. This one, ang degree nito ay 2 plus 1 plus 1, 4. Dito naman ang degree nito ay 3 plus 1 plus 2, 6. Ang degree naman nito ay 1 plus 1 plus 1, 3. Ito naman, ang degree ay 1 plus 2 plus 1, 4. Kaya dito sa apat na to, ang may pinakamalaking degree ay itong term na ito, which is 6. Kaya ang degree ng expression na ito ay 6. Aside from knowing the degree of each expression, pwede rin nating malaman ang kanilang type of expression depende sa number of terms na available. Kapag mag-isa lang, this is a monomial. So this negative 4xyz, this is a monomial. Itong 5 ay monomial. X is also a monomial. Also 5x, monomial sila pag mag-isa lang. Kapag dalawang terms naman, this is what we call binomial. Bi means 2. Mono means 1. So binomial kasi dalawa yung terms. Kapag tatlo naman yung terms, we call it as trinomial. Tri means 3. 1, 2, 3 terms. In such cases wherein more than 3 yung ating terms, we call it as multinomial. Multinomial is an expression with more than 3 terms. And that's it for our video for today mga bata. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, ang Teacher Mo sa Math, for more grade 7 mathematics contents. And please also keep on liking and sharing our videos para mas marami pa akong mga grade 7 na bata na tulad mo ang maabot at maturuan dahil ako si Ma'am Regine, ang Teacher Mo sa Math.